Hello, everybody. Wanted to spend some time today talking about a subject that comes up with my guitar students every now and again. It's something, a little bit of a sort of life experience I share with them. Now, I anticipate that probably most of my viewers here on the channel are probably grown men, middle-aged men, people who've already gone in and they just do guitar as a hobby, and that's pretty much what I am. At this point, I'm 61 years old. I've been playing music since I was 14. It has been my passion in life throughout my life, and at times I have wanted to pursue it professionally, and at times I have pursued it professionally. Just to give you a little bit of a background, I began playing guitar, studying music in my teens in high school, did a bunch of stuff studying theory, composing, arranging, even before I got to a college level. When I graduated from high school, I wanted to pursue a career as a musician, join a rock band, and just follow that sort of teen fantasy to tour the country and just be single, wild, and free, and go out there and play the world. And that never really came to pass for a number of different reasons because of some of the choices I decided and priorities I put in place in life. Now, I'm not saying that it's wrong to want that, but I just want to throw out some things that you may not have considered along the way, things that I've learned going through the process myself. I've got some notes here off to the side, so if you see me looking over here, what I'm doing is I'm looking at my notes. I don't have a teleprompter or a script to go by. Basically, I want you to think of music is given to you by God. It is a gift. It comes to you. It's one of your talents. It's something innate, something that you develop. And a lot of times we tend to think, okay, I can do this now. I'm going to go and make it my job. As you've probably learned, if you're old enough, especially like if you're a teenager in high school or early 20s and you're just dying to get out there and play gigs and tour the world and be with a band and make records and things like that, when you do that, music becomes your job. And every job has a boss, and having a boss can suck. Whatever job you have in life that you'll find, I've had many, you'll find that your job is only as good as your boss. I've had jobs where I had great bosses, and I've had jobs where I had horrible bosses, and I've had really good jobs that were super fun and super interesting, but the bosses were so bad they took all the joy out of the job. Give you some background. I joined the Air Force in my early 20s. I ended up in the intelligence field, working as a signals intelligence technician, operator, German linguist, became an analyst, and it was a fascinating career. I'm an old guy, so I was there during the Cold War. I was present in Germany when the wall came down, and so we had that satisfaction of kind of like mission accomplished. We defeated our communist adversaries, and it was an amazing thing. The technology and stuff that we had then, now this is like 30 years ago, was amazing. Even today, just to have a high clearance to work in that particular world was a fascinating thing, very stimulating, very exciting. But some of the officers that I worked for were just awful, and they just took all the life and all the fun and all of the interest out of the job, and eventually something I just was dying to get out of. So if you apply that to music, when you play music for a living, you have a boss. I played with a band, and we had a great gig at a resort hotel in Alaska, and every time, no matter what songs we were playing, if we played some song where I needed to have a little bit of crunch on the sound and I stepped on the distortion pedal to play a lead or something like that, the manager would come running over before the end of the song, Harley, turn it down, you're too loud. And even if I turned everything down, it was just the sound of the distortion. This guy was grew up during the disco period. If you were playing disco music, then he would have been happy as he could be. But anytime we played any kind of rock stuff that required some distortion, he would come running over and tell us to turn it down. If we were playing something that was like a Madonna tune or something like that, then, and it had all this disco kind of beat to it that we could crank it up. The volume was not the issue. It was just that he didn't like the distortion sound. That was not what he wanted to hear in his hotel. So as a boss, he was a pain in the butt. So every gig you ever play is going to have a boss, whether it's going to be like a music director, whether it's going to be a conductor, whether it's going to be, there's all kinds of different bosses you can have. If you play on a cruise ship, you're going to have a band leader that's going to be the head of the band, control your schedule, control when your rehearsal times are, what you play, when, how loud, how fast. If you don't like having a boss and you want to be an independent free spirit, then that's probably not going to meet your expectations of what you think music is going to be like. Music and entertainment are different things. You can be a great guitar player and play all kinds of technical wizardry and not be entertaining. And you can be a horrible guitar player and you can entertain people and people will stuff money in your pocket. And that's the unfortunate truth of it. I'm sure you've probably seen the videos of like Wiz Khalifa with the guitar behind his head, and he's going plink 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 with a thumb, and he's doing a hammer-on behind his head, and people are going woo because he's Wiz Khalifa and he's on stage and he's entertaining, but he can't play guitar. So you have to get in your brain that the music business, as far as entertainment, is something completely different than the technical accomplishments of being a good musician. And if you want to entertain, that's a different thing than playing music, and it's a different type of craft that you need to develop to do that. Let's see here. Next thing on my list: audiences can suck. I have played your average listener. Your average listener is not sophisticated. They are not educated listeners. They are not educated in the craft of music. And they can hear something that is just the simplest, stupidest thing in the world, and they'll go, ooh, that's so cool. And you can be playing your heart out, playing some of the most technical stuff, and they won't get it. It goes right over their head. I remember when I was in the Air Force, they have an annual event there, the Air Force Worldwide Talent Show. It starts at the base level, and then it works up to finally a worldwide show. And there's some people in there that could have been professional musicians, magicians, singers. Oh, I mean, every kind of talent you can think of that would be in there. Let's see here. Lost my place. There we go. Everything you can think of there. But we were doing the song that we were doing as a group for the show was the Huey Lewis and the News "Back in Time." It was the theme from Back to the Future, and what they wanted us to be doing choreography during this, and during the guitar solo. The guitar solo in that song is extraordinarily technical. It's very fast. It moves around a whole lot. It's not anything I could do dancing around. And they wanted me to try to do this, and I tried, and I couldn't play the solo. So finally I said, okay, everybody else dance. I'm just going to play the solo. I wanted to wail. And so the video, watching it after the fact, it looked kind of funny, is that everybody in the band is like, the horns and stuff are all going all over the place, and I'm just sitting there like, and watching the video afterwards, one of the horn players goes, "Behold the art of the guitar," and the solo was just wailing, but I was just as serious looking as if I was playing classical music with an orchestra. That just showed me that okay, entertaining people is a different thing than playing masterful music, and so you need to have different expectations if that's your thing. Pro music, one thing that I have seen it do in people's lives is that it poisons relationships. That could be on part because musicians have egos, and we all want to be the best, and we all want to be respected, and we all adore fame, and that kind of thing is like something that is really unhealthy with relationships. And it's not just at the people at the top. You see all these stars that are, they're married and divorced, and somebody's living with so-and-so, and then they're breaking up and going with so-and-so. it's obvious that the relationships are shallow and just kind of superficial in many ways because the people that they're really in love with most is themselves. Uh, that said, though, even at a low level, I played in a band. It was a trio with a husband and wife couple, and uh, we did some really great music together. We made a lot of money playing together. They had this really extensive kind of MIDI arrangements of all the different songs that we did, and we could cover all kinds of different styles and varieties. And we played a lot of clubs together. Eventually, I stopped playing with them. They stopped playing altogether, and then they got back. And the wife decided she didn't want to be under the husband's shadow, kind of running the thing, and that she wanted to have her own band and start this out. And the husband called me up and says, "Hey, you want to join my wife's band? She's going to go play with this, she's got a gig lined up in such and such a place." And it meant she was going to be away for about 6 to 9 weeks. Well, I didn't want to leave home for 6 to 9 weeks, even though the gig would pay good. I had other things to do and didn't want to leave my family. And so I said, "I can't do it, I'm sorry." So he finds another guitarist to go down and play with her. And then they put together this little trio, and they went off to some island somewhere up in Alaska to go play for like the fishermen fleets that come in there. It paid really just a super good gig. It was very remote. It was going to be hard to get there. But anyway, 6 weeks later, she sends him a Dear John letter and says, "Sorry, I found somebody here, my true love. He's some fisherman in the fishing fleet, and I'm staying here." And she abandoned her 2 children and left them with her ex, and started a life in some real remote island in Alaska with some fisherman guy. And the damage that was done to those 2 kids was really profound. And the husband, eventually he moved on, but it was like, what a strange situation it was. So whether or not that had anything to do with music, I'm sure the music, contributed to this somehow, because just the instability of the lifestyle, the late nights, the people putting in environments where they're drinking, where their inhibitions are low, any number of different things. That brings me to another topic. Substance abuse is a huge problem with people that play music professionally. I played with one band, and this is my first taste really of playing in a band where that was my main job. And we would go on the road, and we take these short little stints for like maybe a week, be gone, and be back home. So the schedule kind of sucked. But when you're out on the road, it was like, okay, you play your gig, you start playing at like 9, 10, whatever at night. You'd play in the club till like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, whatever closing time was. You would go back to your hotel room, and you'd crash. But you're all wound up from playing the gig, so it takes a while to wind down. So these other guys, I didn't use any substances at all. I'm a religious person, and so I don't do drugs. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. And so any of these guys, they would go back to the hotel room. They'd be smoking weed. Then they'd do some coke. Then they would drink, and they were all messed up. And then everybody pass out, and then they would wake up about 11 o'clock the next morning, get up, have some brunch, something that's not healthy, some greasy spoon diner or fast food, and then they'd kind of linger around, hang around town like a ghost haunting a place, because you're like a zombie. You're up at night when everybody else is asleep, and when they're at work, that's when you get up, and the productive people are out there in their work life doing their stuff, and so there's nobody to hang around with, so you get very isolated. You're that small group of people that hang together, and then you're up all night, they party the night away. And so it was just really a very difficult experience, not being part of that, being outside that circle, but still being close to it. It was a hard gig to do, and I spent a summer doing that, and I said, okay, no more of that. So that kind of turned me off on touring and playing with bands. And it's not just little small-time bands like we were. A friend of mine in the Air Force, he was actually married to one of Glenn Campbell's daughters, and he'd go visit Glenn in Vegas at his show there, and walking backstage there, just all the musicians and stuff were all snorting coke and just doing different drugs and things, and drinking, and it was just part of the culture. And so that's something that if you want to live a long, healthy life and do things that will keep you alive for a long time and enjoy music for the long haul. Being a professional musician in that kind of environment is really it's a death wish, really. A lot of people end up dead from it. A lot of people end up addicted, and it just trashes their life. Not saying that that would happen to you, but I'm just saying it's just part of the environment. You can expect it. One thing that you would not expect, because most people, if you're like a kid in high school and you're thinking about being in a band, you have never had cross your mind organized crime. It is a part of the music business when you get to a certain level. The clubs, when you're making a certain amount of money, doing any business really, you're going to get the attention of organized crime. Most people never reach that threshold and they stay under that. But if you get a business of any kind, the next thing you know, you've got some people coming to your door going, it'd be terrible if your business kind of burned down. You should use our waste management company. And then we will make sure that that doesn't happen. So that kind of stuff happens in a lot of different businesses when the money gets to a certain level. And same thing happens in music. A friend of mine, his wife she was from France. She had played. She was a very talented singer, I guess. Played with a band, and they got a tour back. Again, this is back in the Cold War days, to go behind the Iron Curtain and play a tour like in Czechoslovakia, Romania, somewhere like that, which is a really rare thing. And anyway, some mobsters approached them and said, "Hey, we want you to take these drugs across the border and back behind." And then they said, "Well, no, we're not going to do that." They didn't want any part of that stuff. Anyway, as they're crossing the border going into the country, they get busted for drugs. Somebody had planted the drugs in their equipment and their gear, and she got thrown in jail. And so there she was, like in a communist country, in a jail, charged with drug offenses. And of course, she was innocent, and the rest of the band was innocent. And the mobsters basically came to her, got her out, and said, "Look, we can put you in here. We can let you go. We control all of this. You either do it our way, or you don't make the money." And so they bailed, and they didn't do the gig, and they abandoned that opportunity to earn the money. So at a certain point, you look at these guys like that go back to Vegas and stuff, where organized crime was a part of that. Going back to Sinatra, his reputation as being in with the mob, whether it's drug cartels or gangs or MS-13, or I don't know what it could be nowadays. I stay as far away from that as I can get, but that is a possibility. And so when you're 16 and you're thinking about being a famed guitarist and going around the world, you're not thinking about having to deal with mobsters and people who might kill you or hang you off of a balcony by your heels, 15 stories up in some Vegas hotel, threatening to drop you off unless you do it their way. That kind of takes the fun out of music, doesn't it? Eventually, in my life, like I said, I was in the Air Force, was working in intelligence. I got out and worked in information technology for many years. Made good money doing that. Then I decided I wanted to go into teaching. I spent some time as a guitar teacher. Then I've taught French and history, geography in middle school level. Taught high school. Did a lot of different things. One gig I had for about 4 years, I managed a music store. And I learned a lot about musical instruments, selling of things. Learned a lot about people. And one of the times when I was the manager of the music store, some kids came in. These were all high school guys. They were about 14, 15 at the most. All of the guys in the band basically were like, I want to say, they weren't like runaways. They were, their parents knew where they were. They still had a connection with their parents, but they were called, there's some legal term for it, or so, emancipated minor. That's what they were. That they were living as adults on their own. The 4 or 5 of these guys had scrounged enough money to try to get a really, really crappy apartment in this little town. And they had a gig that night, and they were in their pockets. None of the guys had, they didn't have any money for washing their clothes. So their clothes were dirty, smelly. They were kind of not healthy looking because they hadn't been eating. They've been eating like ramen noodles for like the past 6 months and nothing else but ramen noodles. Uh, like when you live like that, things start to happen. Like your skin complexion gets kind of sallow. Your teeth start to look unhealthy. These guys did not look healthy or anything. And anyway, they were scrounging through their pockets trying to get enough change to buy the guitar player an E string, one E string, so he'd have an E string on his guitar for the gig that night. Between the five of them, they barely scrounged up like the 99 cents they needed plus tax to buy the string. I realized then, I said, okay, there are some guys that they're living the dream. They're living out there on their own, independent of parents, trying to make their living as musicians, and that's the way their life was. That was the quality of their life as professional musicians. Meanwhile, in my store, the guys that came in and bought the Les Pauls and the Paul Reed Smiths that cost $4,000, they were all engineers or lawyers or oil executives or something along that line. That's a lesson to take to heart right there, is that education, skill, the ability to do something that's useful to people, that creates a career and a job, allow these people to continue playing music and get their joy out of music. And music was the joy in their life instead of the job with the boss and the pressure and the problems that come with trying to run any kind of career. So when you're looking at your opportunities, if you're a young guy, consider going to college. If music's your passion, then study music in college. Then do something that you can do professionally. You can do there's a guy I worked with in the IT field. He went to college, he played oboe. I went to college on a scholarship to play oboe. Got his degree in information technology, makes a good living, a nice comfortable home, takes care of a nice family. If you want to be a professional musician in that right, then go to college and study music, become a music producer, music arranger, play with an orchestra, teach. Over the years in my life, by not pursuing music as a full-time thing, I was able to pursue judo and I'm a second degree black belt in judo, and I've taught judo for a number of years. One of my judo students is a professor at a university. He plays upright bass and teaches strings at the university. I recently released an album of some very remarkable music for string bass. Very cool guy. He did it the right way. He found a way to take care of a family and to have a nice prestigious position in a good work environment, and he makes his money off of music that way, and it's a legit way to do it. Learn to sight read really, really well. You can work in the studios, but there's a lot of pressure there, and you got to be able to handle that pressure. If you're sitting there for 120 bars counting rests, and then at a key moment you've got to come in there and play a little noodly riff that's annotated to be played a certain way just at the precise moment for a film score, and if you screw it up, they got to redo the whole take, which you got 70 musicians sitting around that they're paying a huge amount of money. There's a lot of pressure on you at that point, and you got to be able to read it and do it perfectly. You can have careers of guys that have never played a wrong note in their life and made film scores for hit movies and things like that. You never see their names on the credit, but they made their money, and they do something that's challenging and rewarding to them. As I mentioned, you could sell instruments. You could learn to build instruments and design them. There's money to be made in those things. So just to kind of wrap up, music is a gift. Pat Metheny, the great jazz guitarist, once said that music is like something that we weren't supposed to know about, that humanity discovered, that was not supposed to be here on this earth. That's a heavenly thing maybe, and that we found out about it, and that's why it's so hard to make a living here, because in heaven you don't have to make a living, right? The things that you need are there for you. You manifest them out of eternity or something like that. But music is like something, it's a gift that's been given to us. And a gift is something that you give to somebody to be enjoyed. You don't give a gift to a friend and say, hey, here's this great thing, now take it out there and I expect you to make money off of it. you give a gift to somebody to give them joy, and I believe God has given us that gift to help us to enjoy our lives and make mortality here on earth a little more pleasant amidst all the other trials and tribulations that we go through. And there is an important place in the world for professional musicians, but know what comes with the territory when you are choosing that particular path. I'll leave this with you here, and hope that you'll take it for what it's worth. Everybody has their own path they have to walk, and just follow your path and consult with God and move forward and enjoy your life. And let music be something that enriches your life. Don't let it become your life. It's a great servant, but it's a terrible master. And I'll leave that with you now. Thanks for watching, guys.